Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Terry James Gingras, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat. And I have been having technological problems all over the place, which makes me a little grumpy around the edges, but hey, we're here to try to make the world safe for ADHD, so I guess we better get on with it. I am a clinical psychologist and neuropsychologist, or maybe I'm a neuropsychologist and psychologist, whatever. Anyway, I'm in private practice. I work with a lot of ADHD, both kids and adults, and I've been doing this for, a long time. Let's just put it that way. I've been doing this for a long time, and when I started out, we didn't know anything about ADHD. Honest to God, I made it through an APA approved, it's American Psychological Association approved program, and never once heard about ADHD, never once heard about diagnosing it, treating it, nothing. And then I had a child who I was kind of thinking that's what we had going on, but I wasn't sure. I had friends at that time who had gone through postdocs in pediatric psych, and they didn't know what to make of it. And that wasn't all that long ago. My son is now an adult, and I think I probably have made every mistake you can make as a parent of an ADHD child, because frankly, we didn't know what was going on. We didn't know what this was. It just looked like a behavior problem. I think more times than we would like to admit, we probably treated it like a behavior problem. And now we are not, now he's grown up, he's an adult, he's doing whatever he's doing, and we're hoping that this will be, hoping that he works into a reasonable life as an adult, and sometimes it seems like that's happening, and sometimes maybe not so much. So I will tell you that I wish I had known then what I know now. And one of the biggies, I think, is you need to understand that the medical practice, medical care, even mental health people are spring-loaded in certain directions. You see tons and tons of depression. You see tons and tons of anxiety. You start you start thinking that that's the first thing you need to check out. And the whole point of this particular show is that if you've got a kid and school is a problem, you need to make sure you do a full evaluation, because if it's anxiety, fine. If it's depression, fine. But make sure it's not ADHD, okay? Because ADHD is, people always, they talk about gateway drugs and all this stuff. Well, ADHD is the gateway diagnosis for anxiety and depression. That is, if you are at all concerned about your child's ability to pay attention, to stay focused, if he's having temper tantrums and breakdowns and that sort of stuff, for God's sakes, make sure it's not ADHD. Because ADHD leads to anxiety and depression over time. If you're an ADHD child, you are more prone to anxiety and depression. But think, if you're an ADHD child, you are in a school system that you are not happy with, that wasn't designed for you and people who think the way you do, and you get into trouble more times than the other kids do. You have more troubles keeping up academically than the other kids do. And, frankly, if you're a really bright kid, that may not be so much true, but eventually it will be. You can't keep up because you're not paying attention all the time. You're on and off, and that makes for some problems when you're trying to learn stuff. So the acting, the tendency to speak impulsively when you're not supposed to, the tendency to act impulsively, those get you into trouble. And most of the time you're in trouble with adults who don't exactly understand what's going on. Okay? Because we got to understand that ADHD is a neurologic condition. It's genetic. It's inherited. You are born with it. And you didn't have any choice. Okay? And, of course, neither did your parents. You're not ADHD because mom ate too many candy bars during the pregnancy. You're ADHD because her father was ADHD or something like on that order. So ADHD is the first thing you need to look at. Same thing with anxiety. Okay? If you know sometime during the day you're going to get into trouble, or odds are better than not that you're going to get into trouble, guess what? You get a little anxious because you know it's coming. You just don't know when the hammer's going to drop. And that leads to anxiety. So I'm not sure I've ever had an adult come in to be evaluated for ADHD who wasn't already being treated for depression and anxiety. That's what do I want to say? It's the most frequent diagnosis that family practice docs make probably in the whole area of mental health. Only after the patient gets a little bit more aware and starts thinking, it seems to me when I was in third grade, the teacher said something about ADHD. And then we start getting some work done. Then we evaluate things, and then we find out that, yeah, indeed, you do have ADHD. And what my job is, I test. Okay, it's not my clinical impression because I talk to them for a half hour or an hour. It's based on that plus doing testing that's been designed to show ADHD symptoms, ADHD problems. That is what I do all the time. I have been doing it for decades and decades. And a lot of the time, they still show up as probably having some anxiety and depression, but when did it start? And if you treat the ADHD, does it tend to go away? And believe it or not, it tends to get lessened over time. It tends to become more treatable. And I don't mean, another medication. I mean just, psychotherapy, which is easily as effective for mild or what we used to call neurotic depression and neurotic anxiety as any medication. And it works. It's much more effective if you've got the ADHD treated. So share this with people. But if you are just starting out in the child rearing business and you're having some troubles with your child in school and you're getting calls from the teacher and starting to wonder what's going on, make sure you get the ADHD possibility looked at. I'm not saying that every kid who has trouble in school has ADHD, but a lot of them do. And a lot of them are having difficulties, and a lot of them, it won't get better. It'll be a problem forever if they don't get it treated now. Because I've mentioned this before on this show. I see a lot of young adults, people in their late 20s, early 30s, who either were diagnosed but not treated, or sometimes they just made it through and nobody said anything. But they knew there was something wrong. They knew they had troubles. And we're evaluating them and finding most of them are coming in with a diagnosis of anxiety and or depression, but an incredible number of them have pretty severe ADHD. And I'm severe, I mean, they can't pay attention to something boring for a nanosecond. They're gone. And we actually measure that. And it's like, wow, you've been putting up with that all your life? That's amazing. They say that ADHDers don't quit, and I guess not. But I'm amazed at that. And I'm amazed that things aren't more severe for them, I guess, than anxiety and depression. But you have options as a parent of a relatively young child. If your child is older, you still want to get that information. You still want to know for sure. Because I guarantee you, their life does not get better for an ADHDer if they don't at least know what they've got and start doing some compensatory strategies. So, job as parent, think ADHD. And please, think ADHD first. If it looks just kind of odd and there's something you're not really comfortable with, most parents become experts at various colds, flu, ear infections, stomach aches, that kind of stuff. But if it looks more in the psych realm, make sure you get ADHD ruled out. Okay? Now, that's it for today. And I'm sorry we skipped the week, and I didn't mean to, but I had so many tech problems I couldn't finish. I just, it was 2 hours of piddling around trying to get on, and still had problems. So I'm back, and we'll be here next week, next time. And remember, this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat, the show to make the world safe for ADHD, because ADHDers are outside the box thinkers, and we need outside the box thinkers. They're the ones who solve the big problems in the world. So your child could be the one who does that. Let's hope so. Okay, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass. There's some place around here, down at the bottom, I think, where you can make comments, ask questions. Please do. Anything you'd like me to talk about, be more than glad to follow up with you. And we'll catch you next week.